Hey everyone, Brent from the Cafe of Life Chiropractic Studio in West London CrossFit here. As most of you know, we love to move, we love movement, so of course we love to watch the best of the best compete on the world stage at the CrossFit Games. This year was a real treat because we got to see a virtual unknown Canadian in Patrick Vellner go toe-to-toe with the CrossFit juggernauts like Matt Fraser, Ben Smith, Noel Olson, Josh Bridges, and after nearly a week of insanity, Patrick finished on the podium as the world's third fittest man. Just a phenomenal accomplishment. As a fan cheering on a fellow Canuck, it was fantastic. It was an awesome experience for me. When I learned that he was a chiropractic student out of Toronto, going to the same school Dr. Justine graduated from, I knew he was someone I wanted to reach out to and talk to. Patrick is by far one of the chillest, coolest guys out there, and he happily obliged to speak with me. In our talk, we touch on a host of different things. We talk about his athletic background, what got him into the games, his games experiences, and of course, why he chose chiropractic as a field, how he uses chiropractic as an athlete, and what we can expect to see from him next year. So again, thanks again to Patrick for taking the time to speak with me. And if you're not a fan, or if you're not someone following him on Facebook or Instagram, I highly suggest doing so. His podcasts are funny, honest, and poignant, and one of my favorite follows these days. So without further ado, here's our interview. So I'm sitting down now with the third fittest man, having just finished the CrossFit Games. So yeah, it's an honor to speak with you, Patrick.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be speaking with you.
So you were unknown until recently when you were sitting between Rich Froning and Ben Smith on the after show, the cool down show there after the games. So what's the Patrick Vellner backstory? How did a kid from Red Deer, Alberta, become the third fittest man?
I mean, I don't know. It happens slowly, I guess, a day at a time. But I was an athlete, a fairly high level athlete in multiple different sports growing up. I was a gymnast for probably just under 15 years, pretty highly competitive gymnast. And when I retired from that, I kind of had a big void in my days, because I mean, not generally you're training probably upwards of 25 hours a week. So I was used to sort of doing that, and I needed something to fill my time. And I had met some friends who were doing CrossFit. It was probably, I think it was like the end of 2013. So, no, it would have been start of 2013. Because I think I did the Open in 2013 with them after just starting to do CrossFit. And, I sucked, and I wanted to get a little bit better at it. So, it was just something fun that I did. I had guys I went to school with, so we would just train together. It was a little bit more fun to have people around to train with.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we just sort of slowly started doing that and did a couple little local competitions. And I think my background lended itself a little bit to progressing pretty fast. And I mean, like I said, I've been highly competitive in multiple sports. Played lacrosse at a high level. I was a gymnast at a high level. Played rugby for a long time. So,
Okay.
I mean, I competitive, so I think it helped me push myself a little bit harder than maybe the average person. But then the following year did the Open again and qualified for regionals. This was in 2014, before they merged regions and made the super regional. Mm-hmm. So that year they only took 2 athletes out of Canada East, and I finished 5th. And that was, again, kind of popped out of nowhere. No one knew who I was, but I think I barely scraped into the regional, and then performed very well there.
Well, I think with that one,
I
think with that one I saw some footage from you did your workouts like in a Good Life or something.
Yeah. I didn't train at a gym until after that regional. I met a coach there, who I think their gym had 2 women competing there as individuals who both did very well. And they were talking about trying to build a team for the next year to try to make a push for going to the games. So I got approached after that and invited to come train there. And that was the gym that then I started training at for the next year. And we went and we did the whole team thing in 2015, and we did qualify for the games, and we went, and we think we were 20th. So I think that sort of made it seem a little bit more like I came out of nowhere.
Right.
I probably had a reasonable shot at qualifying in 2015 as an individual, but we were doing team and that's what we were doing. So I didn't even give it any thought. But so yeah, I didn't really apply myself too much in the open or worry too much. And it's a bit of a different game doing the team thing. You have to train a bit differently and it's a bit more high tempo. You have interval stuff and it's a little different. So I think it helped me in my development as an individual because you have to develop high speed, high cycle speed, higher power output, and it's a little bit less focused on endurance and lasting a long time. Because in a team event, often I can rest while somebody else works, so you kind of work different energy systems. But after that, we went to the games and then came back, and the focus was to go individual in 2016, and that's what I did.
That's
So,
awesome.
I mean, it all sort of like snowballed. In the open, I expectations were to try to finish top 5 in the region so I could start in the top heat at regionals. And then after whatever 3 weeks, I was in the top 10 worldwide, and it was like, hey, maybe I can finish top 10 in the world. So did that, and then went to regionals, and it was like just to get a spot to the games was the goal. And I mean, I hurt my arm partway in, but
Hmm.
the plan was after a couple of days is like you can still qualify and hit the podium probably. So then I did that, and then same thing at the games. I wanted to finish top half, top 20 was all I wanted going in, and after a couple of days, it seemed like actually I was a little better than I thought, and I had the opportunity to finish in the top 10, and that was kind of on the last couple of days. That's where my head was at.
Hmm.
And yeah, in the end, on the last day, I was paying a lot of more attention to where I was sitting, and I think I would have been disappointed to not finish in third place since that's where I started on the Sunday.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, I managed to pull it off, which
Yeah.
is crazy. So again, it's funny how expectations change. Like going into the year, I would have been happy to just be at the games. After qualifying, I wanted to be top 20. By the last day, I wanted to be top 3.
Right.
And it just like expectations change. I guess it's a bit dangerous to have dynamic expectations like that, but that's how it goes. You have to sort of. I didn't know what to expect until I got there, and then as it wore on, I think it became a little bit more evident that I was able to contend.
Hmm. Well, I think you really laid it on the line, especially with that rope chipper or the pole chipper.
Well, I had to. Those last two events were really good ones for Brent,
Oh
and I
yeah,
knew
he was
that. So
fantastic.
I knew that when they announced them. Honestly, when we went to the tennis stadium and they announced the last two events, I was like, shit. Like
Mm.
I have to I'm gonna hold on to third place barely if I can, because I knew he would make a good push. That rope chipper was like it's squarely in the middle of his wheelhouse, and I knew he would win that event.
Yeah.
So like for me, it was just like try to come second or as close as you can to Brent, so that you don't the point spread's not as bad. And I think I finished third in that one.
Yeah,
Like we're
that
generally
was
pretty good
fantastic
at the
placing.
same types of things. So and then that last one, he was killer on the pegboard, and I knew I had to just try to keep
Yeah.
good and close. And I almost fell off the board a couple times.
Yeah.
So I hung on by whatever it was, a tenth of a second in the end there for
Wow.
the to hang on to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was exciting. We had to make it exciting. And I
Oh,
mean, I would
definitely.
have been happy to be fourth. At really in the end, I say that I would have been a little disappointed, but I would have never imagined to be fourth place anyways, and to
Mhm.
have a Canadian on the podium either way would have been awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome. The yeah, as a fan, it was just phenomenal to cheer both you and Brent on. And it's
Yeah,
funny because I would never cheer against Ben Smith until
yeah, right.
until I had both you
have,
guys in there.
have somebody who's right there.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty crazy. I'm cheering against Ben Smith. Like,
Yeah,
man,
not Ben's like the nicest guy in the world.
totally. He just seems like the nicest guy.
Oh, he totally was for sure. From the first day, would like make you go out of his way to make you feel welcome and sort of. He was a great, dude. So I was happy to stand on the podium with those guys.
So there you were on top of the Open in the Canada East, and there was a Reddit post that said, "Does anyone know who Patrick Vellner is?" So now that you're the third fittest man, and the cameras have started following you around, like you mentioned in one of your Facebook posts, how do you see your life changing?
Hopefully not that much. I think it's a bit of a surreal environment when you're at the CrossFit Games. Like that's what's going on there. Like that's what people are there for. And especially even as any individual athlete, you're sort of in the upper echelon there, and you're all kind of rock stars in that world. But I mean, the last day it was crazy. You're kind of shaking hands with everybody, getting congratulations, taking pictures, and then the next day we left and we went. Like was home within 2 days, hanging out by the lake, and I'm just Pat Vellner at the lake. Like no one cares. But I mean, in that world, for sure, I'm in it now, and there's going to be more opportunities that can come up. Like in the future, we'll see about when the invitational comes up, or even for things like during the Open, doing Open announcements. Like there's probably going to be more opportunities for me to go and maybe travel a bit and do things. But some people had asked if I'm going to put my school on like try to put it on hold and go full time and do that. And I don't think that's worth it for me. My priority is to get educated, and this is at the end of the day, it's a hobby. It's something I do because I enjoy it and I have fun with it. And I don't actually think that I would benefit that much from trying to be full time. Like I've seen what the full time athletes are doing, and I mean, I would probably go crazy trying to do that. I think part of what makes me successful is that I can step outside of my identity as an athlete and go be a student for a while. And I think if you do any one thing too much, you sort of you'll lose interest or you'll burn out. And I have never been the kind of person who can study or sit still for long hours on end. So when I'm at school, I'll work for 2 or 3 hours at a time, and then I'm going stir crazy and going brain dead. So then I'll go to the gym for 2 hours, and then I come back and I can do more work, and I feel like I work more efficiently and more effectively because I do that. I think if I was at the gym all day, I'd waste time. I would just sit around and sure, maybe I'd pretend that I spend another hour or two a day doing mobility or doing whatever, but I don't think that would be real. Okay. And like after the regionals, I was training pretty full time for the games. But like there's only so much work you can do in a day. Like you put 2 sessions in, and if you're doing it right, you don't need any more than that. I don't think you're going to benefit that much. So for the majority of the year, you're not even going to be doing those 2 sessions a day. You're building strength for the first half of the year. As it comes into competition season, maybe you start to pick up some accessories and do a little bit more conditioning. But in the large part, I don't think that I personally would benefit. Maybe some people need it, but I'm going to try to keep doing what I did last year. I had success doing that. So I don't, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Right.
That's right. You got a recipe there for success.
Yeah. I think part of my success is that I'm able to shift gears and sort of like stay fresh in whatever I'm doing at the time. School will probably get a little more challenging. Of course with school, there's times of year that get crazy. Like during exam times, you get stressed, and it's hard to maintain that. But it almost becomes even more important then because you have an outlet and you have something else to do other than drive yourself crazy. So I'm going to try not to change too much. But again, like I said, there's going to be opportunities to travel and do some things, and I'd be stupid to say no. Like they're going to be really cool opportunities, and there's probably going to be some more sponsorship opportunities, and I can certainly make something of it. It'd be foolish to squander the opportunity, but like I said, I have to maintain my priorities, I think, the way they are.
Well, just this morning when I was talking to my wife and son, I was like, man, I can't wait to watch the Vellner Fikowski Road to the Games 17.
Yeah,
it'd be awesome.
Brent actually sent me a message the other day. He took a screenshot of his he texted who was it? It was Rory McKernan, and he's like, he just put a text like, just so that to get this out there before you bigwigs start making any decisions, Vellner versus Fikowski Open announcement. So we're trying to get an Open announcement going
awesome.
For us.
Bring it to Canada for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be fun. So I think we might be able to swing that. I think it'd be hard for him to say no.
Yeah. The games is just a pressure cooker of everything. There's lots of stress. You're sore. You're beat up, and then you've got this incredible sun and heat to deal with. So how do you deal with all that stuff?
It's actually, they do a really good job, particularly this year as far as the heat's concerned. I think after they had so many issues last year with some athletes getting heat stroke and needing to withdraw, they probably had 3 or 4 athletes drop out, and key athletes like Annie and Carol Webb got super affected. So they really put an emphasis on athlete safety, heat safety this year. And people may have noticed it that on the floor there was, and on the field there was always big ice chests that were full of ice and cold water. So you had access to that, and it was sort of, they got heavily criticized last year that it wasn't so much a CrossFit competition as like a Hunger Games style, whoever can survive. And athletes have joked about it this year. Like last year, if you were able to finish the competition, you finished top 10. So like this year, they really made steps to make that better. And we had that. The ice chest was one thing. The athlete tents are all air conditioned and cool. So in general, when we're not on the competition floor, if you're not warming up, you go inside. Like we get out of the sun. It's kind of unfortunate because if like my family was there and I didn't see them during the entire day, we'd go have dinner at the end of the day. But it's not worth it to go out and be in the stands because it's hot. It's hot up there when you're in the sun. They have big ice baths in the back. They had a snow cone machine that you could go just get cups of like shaved ice and just sort of eat snow while you're warming up. So they really took good care of taking the heat safety very seriously.
Oh, good.
So we were good. I didn't have any issues. I think you had to be smart about it, and you have to use the resources that are available to you. So when you finish an event, it's worth it for you to jump in an ice bath for just 5 minutes, cool your core body temperature. Even just when you're on the floor, put your hands or some of your extremities in one of those buckets, so it really that circulation really cools your whole body fast. And at times of the day, you'd come out of the ice bath, go in the athlete tent, and sometimes I was cold, like I'd be like goosebumps cold, and that's a pretty good sign because then you're starting from a low body temperature when you warm up and you go compete. Because if you're starting at a high temperature, you're gonna overheat real fast.
Yeah.
Particularly some events like on the last day when you're midday doing that rope chipper where it's all erging and aerobic, like that stuff heats you up so fast that if you were going into that hot, you were doomed. But so the heat was actually okay if you took your own steps to manage it. The resources were there.
Oh, good.
As far as everything else, eating is challenging. Just because when you're hot and you're working all day, you don't really feel hungry. So you kind of have to force feed yourself, and particularly in the morning and at night. But again, the mornings, the first 3 days of competition, we competed early. Like we had to be checked in on Friday at 7 a.m. or something, and on the field at 8. And we had the early wake up on Wednesday. We had to be up at about 3. The swim went at like 8, so you had to be up and kind of in the lobby by 7. And so you can't really get a full breakfast and then go compete. So I mean, you supplement during the day, and you sort of, we're responsible for bringing our own stuff for that. They have some snacks and things around, but it's sort of limited. So you got to be on top of that. And I had a nutritionist that was there with me, and my coach did a pretty good job of keeping you on top of that. Like I remember one night, it was the Wednesday night, where we came back from the ranch, and we didn't get back to the hotel till midnight. And we had to get up for the swim the next morning. And I got back to the hotel, and he had like 2 big things of sushi. And I had to just pack away sushi and then go straight to sleep. Because he's like, you're going to need this. Like you're eating for Sunday. Like on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday, you're eating for Sunday. If you don't do it, you're going to be dead on Sunday. And it's sort of, it's an investment game. And the athletes who are able to perform at near their capacity or at a high level on Saturday, Sunday are the athletes who win in the end. And I mean, it's stressful, but the athletes do a pretty good job of keeping each other relaxed. Like no one's in there stressing each other out. Everyone's pretty nice and
cool.
chill. So there's TVs in the athlete tent and area, and everybody will watch each other, and people are pretty good too. People help each other out, and it's a pretty good community and supportive bunch of guys. So it's fun. Everyone's good. Everyone understands, I think, at that level, especially the guys who've been there a lot of times. They're happy to help you out and sort of be a part of your success if you have it. Or like no one wants to watch you fail and fall apart. That's for sure.
Going into regionals off the first event, it might have been the first pull. I'm not sure. On the snatch ladder, you tore your bicep. Actually, I was kind of surprised. I expected to hear more about it actually during the games, but as soon as I said it, man, I haven't heard anything about Patrick's bicep. That's when they started talking about it again.
Yeah.
But so I'm just curious. Going into the games, was it a worry? Was it didn't really mean much to you? Did it free you up mentally?
It's funny you say you didn't hear too much about it. We heard a lot about it,
Oh,
and I
did you?
had a bet
Okay.
going with Matt Fraser for we owed burpees every time. I had to do burpees every time they'd mention it, and then he had to do burpees every time they mentioned his back-to-back second place finishes.
Hmm.
So we were going back and forth all weekend with that one, which was fun. But I mean, it's something that's in your head a little bit. I going forward after regionals, I tried my best to. I mean, the first couple weeks I was trying to recover it. I didn't do anything for a week, and then my second week back to training was a lot of position work for how I can stabilize it and how I can work without putting too excess pressure on it, like unnecessary pressure on it. Because I mean, when you're tired or when you're whatever, your movements might break down a bit, and that's sort of when it becomes a worry.
Hmm.
When I'm fresh, it's not a problem. Um, and by a few weeks in, I was trying to train as if it was fine. It took a little while to get confidence back, doing like heavy snatching again. I probably didn't snatch back to the bar that I hurt myself on was the 245 bar. I don't think I snatched 245 until probably 2 weeks before the games.
Okay.
Um, and then I was like a few days later, I was doing 255 for singles, and like it's fine. Like it was just more, you get a little bit of a mental block. Did a lot of work of overhead squat stability and positioning, and just like that was where it was the worst.
Hmm.
So I had to do a little bit of that. I practiced on a pegboard a little bit, and that's really hard on it. So I was pumped to see that in the last event. Um, things were coming down to the wire, I was like, "Oh, great, pegboard, fuck!"
Yeah.
But it was okay. I mean, it was more. I remember 2 weeks or so after it had happened, I went on vacation with my girlfriend for a week after the games or after the regionals, and she said like, "You need to stop," because there was all this media about it and whatever, and she's like, "You need to stop thinking about it. Like your arm's not hurt." Because like the more you think about it being hurt, like you're gonna treat it like it's hurt, and you're gonna be hurt.
Hmm.
And like if you can just not like don't be hurt in your head, don't be hurt, and it's fine.
So in a lot of
So
interviews, you mentioned, that's a future Vellner issue.
yeah, and I was really the way I got it, like I got it looked at, and I spoke to some specialists, and the general consensus was by the end of regionals, like, I was able to compete effectively all of the regional with it hurt, freshly hurt, and they're kind of like, well, look, like if it's fully torn or whatever, you can compete at the games, and like you're not going to tear it worse.
Right.
Like if it's hurt, then it's hurt. If you're okay to compete, then compete. Like in my mind, you don't know when those opportunities come around again. Like the field gets deeper every year, and you need a lot of breaks to even get there. You need things to go right. And I was riding a lot of things going right so far this year, like between the Open and the regionals and things. That was like the only setback. And granted, it was a pretty serious setback, but I wasn't gonna not go to the games because of that.
Hmm.
After I competed the whole regional, I was fine. I qualified with it hurt, so if I had to compete with it hurt, that's fine.
When you pulled the bar and you felt it go, like that initial moment must have been like, oh man. And then how long was it before you're like, oh, you know what, I can do the regionals, no problem.
Um, I was in a funk for probably a couple hours there. I wasn't a nice guy to be around for a little while. It was my first bar at 245. It kind of popped, but I've had kind of chronic shoulder issues from gymnastics for a long time. So I have a bit of shoulder instability on the best of days. So occasionally things clunk around and it's not
Mm.
uncommon. So initially I thought it was just that because it kind of popped and it didn't hurt. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know. That was weird. Like I missed the bar and I was like, okay, whatever. So it took a second. And then my second attempt, I pulled and I got under the bar. And when I caught the bar there, it really hurt. And I was like, oh, okay. And
Mm.
my judge apparently he said after that he heard it kind of, and I was like, okay, well, that's gross. But he was saying, he's like, don't pull it, like you're done. Like stop. You're clearly hurt. And I was kind of like, no, like I think I can get one. Even if I get one, it makes a difference in points. And so like you just aren't thinking. I was in competition mode, like I was on the floor competing, and I wasn't thinking about like this is gonna hurt my arm, this is gonna whatever. It's like no, like you can catch one, like it's no problem. Just do it.
Mm.
Like take a
Oh, that's
second.
cool.
Like you don't have time to clear the bar, but like if you can get one or two, it'll make a big difference, and you need that. Um, so I think I pulled the bar like 3 or 4 times and missed it and missed it and missed it, and it like came back afterwards. Like you had to come back to the start if you didn't pass that bar, and sat there for a second. I didn't really even think that it could have been a bicep injury, and then one of the other guys said it because he had done the same thing I think a year before, and he's like Vellner, like did your bicep go? And then I like looked at it and I was like, yeah, like actually now that you say that, I think that it probably is what it is. So we walked into medical and they assessed it, and they're kind of like, yeah, that's probably what it is. And there was an orthopod there who looked at it, and so we got some ice on it, and it was bad. Like I had high expectations for my year, and I didn't even need to do well in that event. Like the strength events are never my wheelhouse, and I didn't even need to win that event. I didn't even need to be top 10 in that event. I just needed to kind
Mm.
of
Make
move
it through
through
it.
it,
Yeah.
whatever. I just needed to not hurt myself was the only thing I needed to do. Orthopod who was there, who cleared me, he wasn't there at the time, but then he showed up that night on the first day and looked at it, and he's the main orthopod for the games as well. It's just coincidence that he lives in our region,
Okay.
and I saw him at the after party and a couple times during the week. And I remember at the after party, he bought me a beer and he was like, "Man, can you imagine if I didn't clear that?" And he even said, he's like, because the initial clearing, he wasn't there yet. He was still flying in or like driving in. So it was between events and he had to do it over the phone. And they really trust him because he's been their guy for years.
Yeah.
So he allowed it over the phone. And he's like, man, I've never heard of somebody clearing something over the phone. Like, so, and he just like,
Yeah.
because they did the assessment and you seemed like you were okay with it. And they obviously with the stipulation that the medical staff and judges watch and clear it on top of that. He's like,
Yeah.
worst case, you start and it hurts and you stop. Was like in my mind, it's like whatever.
Oh,
But
that's
I
cool.
knew you weren't gonna. He's like, I knew you weren't gonna do more damage, and he's just like, but could you imagine if I just flat out said no?
Mm.
It's like, geez, like where would we be, right?
Yeah, we had someone at our gym actually. One of the coaches tear his distal bicep or
See,
distal bicep
that's
tear, and that's a totally different story.
it's funny actually. In the follow up after that, I've had a lot of people actually on my athlete page contact me and say like, hey, I also tore my bicep, and I've probably since having heard it, I probably 20 to 30 people have reached out and been like, hey, like, do you have any advice? Do you have any whatever? Like, it's like it depends because there's a few different ways to tear it, and I had some people saying like, oh, I don't believe that you tore your bicep because you wouldn't have been able to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe they're right, and hopefully, then it wouldn't. I don't have to worry about surgery or things like that. But it depends. Like, they'd be like, "Oh, I tore my bicep and I couldn't do anything." And it's like, "Well, did you tear it like at the bottom? Because if you tore it distally, like, no, you can't do anything."
Yeah.
And it was sort of a funny and a trick of anatomy, right? That people hear bicep and they're like, "Oh, it's so much. It's all arm flexion," but the long head of your break eye is not really that relevant in gross motor movement of your arm. It's quite small and quite weak. So I lost like a bunch of supination and like straight arm like flexion and stuff like that. But as far as my pulling, anything close to my body, I was able to still do without much issue. And as long as I'm moving properly, everything should be pretty close to my body.
Yeah.
I'll get asked about it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'll have answers. I had an MRI this morning, so hopefully, I'll have some real concrete answers to give someone finally.
Curious what your most memorable moment or event was at the games. Um,
Yeah, easy actually. So you always hear people say that the tennis stadium at night is like the craziest thing and the coolest feeling, and they're 100% right. It was actually the Friday night we did our first events in the tennis stadium, and it was awesome and cool. But I think just based on the nature of the events on Saturday night, we were much later, and that 100% the box jump D-ball one,
yeah.
because it was such a fast event that when we came in, it was crazy. Like people, well, I remember we came in, you had whatever a minute to get organized and get your starting mat, and they announced like at 30 seconds, at 10 seconds, and I think at like the 10-second call, it got so loud and like everybody stood up and it was like you could get goosebumps. It was just like it was so crazy. You couldn't hardly hear the standby call or the beep to start. Like you had to really, we were all like listening really close because you'd miss it. And it was crazy. It was just so loud in there. Like that was a professional sports moment. Like you felt like a pro athlete, and it was crazy. It was that was the coolest feeling for sure. Is it was the loudest I've ever felt a stadium, and you could just really feel the energy of everybody.
As a fan watching that, the live broadcast, it was exciting to watch. You couldn't really tell what was going on. So many
Yeah,
things
I mean
going
it
on
was
at
just and
once.
that's what I mean. Based on the nature of the event, it was so fast and it was so tight the whole way along. Like I think it really lended itself to everyone being like loud and crazy, and it was cool. It was, and I mean the finish too. That at
Yeah,
night like that event was at like 10 p.m. or something like that.
yeah.
But when the sun goes down, the condensation kind of picks up because it cools off a lot. So that platform we jumped on was so slick, and you like if you watch the feeds, I'm sure every athlete probably bailed on it.
I
And
know
if they did,
Fikowski did for sure. Yeah.
if they didn't, they weren't running hard enough to the platform because you had to pass through the red into the white for your timer to stop. So like the red was maybe like 2 or 3 feet long, and then the white was maybe like 3 or 4 feet long.
Okay.
So you had to pass through, and you were coming in fast. Like in that one, I beat Fraser by like a tenth of a second, and so we both like hit the platform at the same time, and both just blew up. And like you were sitting on a spectator's lap, and there it was like it was crazy. Like the whole thing that was a cool event. I mean, I had made a couple little mistakes in it and it didn't go perfectly, but it was definitely a cool event. Like I had a blast at that one.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
And you're a chiropractic student now. What led you into chiropractic?
Like I said, I have a pretty extensive sports background, and my family's got a couple pretty close friends who are chiropractors in town in Red Deer. So I always grew up being treated by a chiropractor fairly regularly, and enjoyed it. I mean, and I've competed in lots of big competitions when I was in gymnastics, and you had therapists available to you of various different kinds at events. And so I generally would just go see the chiropractors because it's something I'd done, and I just have had a good experience with chiropractic care growing up. So I think that played a bit of a role in it, and I always wanted to be involved in healthcare a little bit. Because I've been a healthy individual for my whole life, and I like to promote health and wellness. Um, it was sort of a field that stuck out to me as having a fairly good atmosphere around it because you have people coming in to see you who are interested in maintaining or their health and or developing a better understanding of their health. So it's a bit better teaching, like a little bit more teaching and less just straight treating. So I enjoyed that aspect of it, and I feel like you have a lot more people coming in who are interested in their health as opposed to people who have an issue now and begrudgingly are coming to see you
Right.
because they need to. You have people who choose to come see you. I'm at the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College, and I finished my first year right before regionals, and then I start up again my second year in a few weeks here.
And so, after the first year, is it everything you thought it would be? Is it going well?
I've enjoyed it so far. I
Okay.
mean, I did very well in my first year. Not that it matters a ton as long as you're learning the material, but I'm enjoying it. I like that, especially at our school, you get a lot of practical and hands-on education. So we do a lot of treating and technique hours, and it's good. You don't spend hours upon hours. Well, you do, like sitting in lecture halls, but they break it up a little bit with some practical work, and you get to work with your classmates and develop your skills a little bit more through practice. So I've enjoyed it a lot. Obviously, there's stressful moments like school is school, but
Yeah.
it's good. I've been in school for long enough now that I'm getting good at it.
So then, how do you balance all that? I know you live out of Montreal, is it? You live in
Well,
Montreal.
during the school year, I live in Toronto, just right close to my school.
Okay.
But
But you've got
I don't know. It's like I don't know. You keep a lot of balls in the air, but um, I mean, I wouldn't be doing everything if I didn't enjoy it. Like school is not awful. Sometimes it gets hard, but you at the end of the day, you're there because that's something you want to do. That's what professional school is like. So it's not that hard to stay interested and stay committed to it. And the same for CrossFit right now. Like I don't do it be like, no one's forcing me to be there. Like I do it because I enjoy it, and it's something that I like. So for now, it hasn't been that complicated. During the school year, I'm pretty much just going to school and training, and like whatever. I'm doing whatever I can to be a social butterfly at the same time. But you, I break up my days of school with training. So you'll go to school for a few hours in the day, and when I leave school and I'm tired of learning, I'll go train for a few hours, and then when my body gets tired, I'll come home and put a few hours of studying in, and at the end of the day, I sleep like a baby. So
Awesome.
it's not too bad. I think in my mind, at the end of the day, if school starts to suffer, I just have to cut back on my training hours a little bit, because that's still my priority. I'm not. I'm in school, and I'm an athlete on the side. So
So then how important is getting checked and adjusted to you as an athlete?
it's good. I think that's just part. It needs to be part of your recovery and your performance habits. Like we're fortunate at the school because I'm in school for that. There's clinics. There's a clinic in the school, and I go 3 times a week, and I get adjusted and get some other work done, whatever I need. And I think the reality of competing at a high level in CrossFit is that you're constantly beating your body up. Like we load our joints a lot, and you do run the risk of if you move poorly one day because you're sore somewhere else and you're compensating, or you're just tired and you miss a movement. Like mistakes happen, and you just have to have. That's why I think it's important to have it as part of your routine. If Because it is going to happen at a certain point. Like you're never going to move perfectly all the time. So just you have to be ready and prepared to deal with those things as they come up. So I've had multiple different small injuries that have popped up through over the course of the year, but because I'm going in and getting treated very regularly, they never get to be big issues. I'll catch things early, and I keep myself in line so that I'm able to keep performing at a high level consistently.
And how many game athletes would you say use chiropractic?
Actually, a lot. And actually, the athlete services tent where we had all of our the therapists and stuff there, I was in there. I think the only time I really went and got treated there was on the last day. But they were mostly chiros, I think, that were on their athlete services team, which was pretty cool. I was surprised to hear that. I thought they'd have a few people from various different fields, but they were the majority chiros. And at regionals, there was a bunch of chiros there, and a lot of athletes are using it very consistently. A lot of people brought their own as well. They had an area where you could have an outside healthcare provider. And I actually, by random chance, a friend of mine who I went to school with, who graduated this year and just got his full licensing, kind of would have been a month or two ago. He was out there because his brother was treating one of the masters athletes, and so I used him as my outside healthcare provider, and he treated me a couple of times. So it was good. And I said, I think a lot of the guys do, and some of them are bringing their own. So your body is your instrument at that point. If you're going to be a high level competitor, and you have to treat it as such, you have to take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, like I said, for the last year's games thing, and this year it still stands true. At the end of the weekend, whoever's not beat up stands the best chance of cracking that top 10 or whatever. So you're not doing yourself any favors by not getting checked. That's for sure. It's a pretty easy thing to do, and I think that you only stand to benefit. So I certainly would recommend it to anybody, and I think, like I said, I think most people there are onto it, because it's, like I said, it just makes sense. It's good care for your body, and that's what we need for sure. Especially for us, like I said, joints and backs and everything like that. You're doing a lot of loading, so I think it's definitely necessary.
And as a high performance athlete, has that changed your approach to chiropractic at all? Like, do you approach it differently than your fellow classmates?
I don't know if I do. I think that maybe it makes a difference in where you might end up as a practitioner. Like I might try to treat more athletic in an athletic field, or be a sports chiro, do a sports residency or something. But I don't think it does a ton. I think to a certain degree, I understand movement really well, because I've been trained in all kinds of movements. So I'm pretty good at delivering forces and doing things and manipulating body very well. But I don't know. I think that for one thing, it allows you to bring some of your own experience into it. So if I have certain people with certain issues, like I've had every issue that there is almost. So
That pretty much sums up all my questions. What can we expect for you in the future? You mentioned that you'll just keep grinding at it.
yeah, I don't think it's hard to think about that right now. And I think I was trying to think about it a bit yesterday, but like it's too close to call all the time this in this sport. Like the goal right now is I'm fairly certain I'll be able to make it back to regionals if I stay healthy. But regionals is anyone's game. You can't afford to really hiccup in anything, and
Mm.
I want to make it back to the games. I'd hate to come third and then not make it back. So I don't know. The plan is to just keep grinding at it and keep chipping away day by day. And the priority is to stay healthy and get healthy. Like if like I said, I'm dealing with my arm stuff right now, finally. But we'll see. I'm short term. If I hopefully we'll get an invite to the invitational. Hopefully Brent and I, and
Yeah.
we'll get to compete beside each other on the same team. And right now that's kind of it.
And what's
Relax
the
for till the end of the summer and get ready for school.
awesome? What's the best way for people to jump on the Pat Vellner bandwagon?
I have an athlete page on Facebook that's just Patrick Vellner. I have an Instagram that's at P Vellner, and I have Twitter, but I don't really use it. I think I link most things through it, so it has some activity, but I
Mm.
don't generally tweet very often. But I think that's Pat Vellner. So any social media platform, I should be popping up on it every now and then.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to answer my questions. It's, you know, having just watched you go through regionals and the games is just, it's just awesome to have some time to speak
Uh,
with you.
it's my pleasure, man.
Um, yeah, so thanks a lot.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And yeah, I'm looking forward to actually getting you down to London. You got to check out our office.
Yeah, I'll have to come down at some point. When I'm back in Toronto, it'll be a bit easier.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. All the best
Hey,
to
it's my
you,
pleasure.
and just looking forward to watching more.
Yeah, hopefully we'll keep it interesting. Maybe not so interesting as like the end of the games or the injuries, but maybe smooth sailing this year. That's the goal. Try to have just like a year with nothing
Hashtag
too
smooth sailing.
crazy. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Patrick.
Hey, my pleasure. Take care.